Hey everybody, this is Ermantourage with Ermantourage. Thank you so much for being here with us. It is Saturday, July 25th, month 101 of COVID. But thank you all for being here. Just during this time, it's just giving us time to connect and make connections with our industry guests. We have done a lot of these for the last few months. It's a really fun time, also it's also for a good cause because we are doing this for two organizations, Equal Justice Initiative and the Innocence Projects. And so please check those out, EJI.org and innocenceproject.org. So we are with Vanja Cernjul today, who is the cinematographer for such projects as Crazy Rich Asians, Orange is the New Black, The Deuce, Marco Polo, Netflix's The Perfection, and The Magicians, and a lot of other projects coming up as well. So thank you so much for being here with us, Vanja. I met him 2 years ago for a really cool event in New York City. But here we are 3 years later reconnecting. So thank you so much for being with us again.
Glad to be here. Thank you for doing this.
Of course. Before we get going, is my framing okay? I want to make sure that I look good on camera.
It's great. It's perfectly centered. It's nice.
Ah, yes. Perfect. Perfect. So I'm going to start with the most trivial question ever, the most obvious question. How'd you get started in the game? Because when I ask folks their story, of course, it's always different. And so, we like to ask them because, we like to hear the path of different creative people in the industry. So please share your story, how you got started, and specifically why you chose cinematography as a means of storytelling.
Well, I started getting interested in photography very early on. I was, 12. I was in 7th grade, and my mom bought me a camera. It was a Russian Ljubitelj, which was like a two-eyed version of the Yashica. Very cheap. I think it was plastic. I don't know. I would like to find one these days on eBay and buy it. But it was a first camera I had, and I was obsessed with the viewfinder for some reason. When I would see the world through the viewfinder, everything looked so much more interesting, and I could explore just my bedroom and look around the viewfinder. So I got very excited. I got into developing my own films and printing my own prints. And in the basement of the building where I lived, my dad built me a small darkroom, and I was spending nights and nights and nights in the darkroom. I just love photography, so I knew I wanted to do something with photography. And then when I got into high school, I started taking pictures of rock concerts, and I think I even got two photos published in papers. And I just loved the lifestyle, and I thought this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Just go from concert to concert and take pictures, and hang out backstage. It was just fantastic when you were like a teenager. So then the high school was over, and I needed to figure out which school in the University of Zagreb, where I'm from, has the photography department. I absolutely had to get into university because at that time, serving the army was mandatory, and if you didn't get into university, you were supposed to serve for 18 months. But if you got into the university, it was 12 months. I was like, I have to get into university. So I was looking for something that was closest to photography because there was no school for still photography. And I came across cinematography department at the Film Academy, it's actually Academy of Drama Arts. And I thought maybe this is the closest thing. For the entrance exam, they were asking for 30 black and white photographs. So I thought, well, this should be easy. I have a lot of photographs. And it was a very competitive program. They're only admitting, I think, 3 students every year to cinematography department. And of course I failed, but I kept trying, and I managed to get in on somehow miraculously at the 3rd attempt. it was actually at film school. I didn't really know much about. I was 18 years old. I didn't really know much about filmmaking or cinematography. But it was at the film school where I discovered that everything I loved about still photography was there in cinematography. But there was also much more, and also the collaborative aspect of it. You know, working with people, traveling, being on location. Even when you're making a student movie, it's always an adventure. So it was an accident actually, but it was in the film school that I realized that this is what I wanted to do. And it just so happened that when I graduated from film school, it was 1991, and my country, which was then Yugoslavia, plunged into a terrible war, and everything started falling apart around me. And of course, the film industry disappeared overnight. And there really was a film industry there, because there was a strong domestic film industry, and also a lot of the American co-productions were being shot there. Like Sophia's Choice was shot there when I was in film school. A lot of big TV shows like War and Remembrance, and so there was a significant film industry that just disappeared overnight. And so left with the choice of what to do, as things started, heating up in the country. I got I got a call one night from a friend who started working for CNN. It was, what happened is that, overnight, as things started getting ugly, there were these journalists from all over the world just flew into the country, and the city was full with the foreign journalists, foreign camera crews trying to figure out what's going on and how to work. And they started recruiting kids like me to be drivers or translators or sometimes even camera people. And I got a call from a friend who started working for CNN. And this was a time when the news, TV news became what it is today, a form of entertainment, basically. The Gulf War just ended. They had a dish in Baghdad. The whole thing became something different than what it was in the 80s. And all these companies came in like loaded with equipment and money and everything. So I was hired by CNN for a couple of days, and then I got a call from the Worldwide Television News Agency to start working for them as a camera person covering the conflict. And this is the agency that later became Associated Press. So I was working for them and for Vice News sometimes, which became Reuters TV later. So I quickly, I was on the front lines every day, witnessing what was going on. But there was one thing, when you see how the sausage is made at such an early age. I was probably 20. I was 22 years old, and how market-driven the production of television news is. I started really disliking what I saw and how the product was made, and it was about the product. It was not, it was not as much as about what's really happening. It's about what the market is asking you to
Gotcha.
do, and so I knew I didn't want to stay in the world of television news for very long, and as the situation started calming down a little bit, I realized that I'll either have to leave the country or do something else, because I wasn't going to be able to, for the foreseeable future, do what I wanted to do in Croatia. So I had this, because of how European style nationalism influenced my life. It was always the most destructive force in my life, and in the life of my parents, in the life of my grandparents. We talk about a lot of isms, but that are affecting us all. But this was something that was the most destructive force in my life. And I had this romantic, naive idea that, which is still true to some extent, that New York is a place where you can get as far away from that as possible. Like everybody's from everywhere, everybody's mixed, and it just I can put this idea of European nationalism behind me, which I never really fully understood. So I decided that New York was a place, and I didn't know anybody in New York. I had one friend that recently moved to New York, and one thing that I knew about myself, when I was in film school in Croatia, I was a first assistant. I was a focus puller on one student film. And I knew I can't do that. I knew this is not, I knew going through the ranks, that path is not going to work out for me because I was just not a focus puller material. And I didn't know anybody in New York. So I thought maybe I should go back to school and meet people. That was my primary, because I already graduated from one film school. I thought maybe this is, if I go to grad school in New York, I'll meet people quickly and hopefully start growing with them. And that was a good choice because it worked out as I wanted it to work out. I again miraculously got into the School of the Arts at NYU, and almost all the students there wanted to direct and produce. And I was one of the very few who, from the beginning, knew that I wanted to do cinematography. And so because of that, and because I already had some experience, I was able to choose between the most talented, choose projects from most talented students from my generation. So I shot something like 20 short films, and some of the films were successful, got into festivals like Sundance. As I mentioned earlier, one of the films was nominated for Academy Award, or even won the Academy Award. I can't remember, for student film. And I was getting exposure, and things were going really well. After I graduated, I put together a show reel from all the student films and all the professional work I've done before, and I sent it to all the agents that I could find in the phone book, like everybody. Nobody wrote back, of course, except one person who then became my agent. And so I started working in low budget indies, and it was a completely different world in the 90s on that terrain. And so I started working right out of film school, film here, film there, every now and then music videos. There were a lot of music videos there. And films, I was fortunate again that I got involved in projects that got recognition. Again, a lot of festivals, and Sundance was, of course, the most important thing in everybody's lifetime. So I had like every year I would have maybe one title in competition for a couple of years. So things were going really great on paper, and I was able to start building my CV and a bio, and but I couldn't, from making these kinds of projects, I couldn't really support myself in New York. So it was hard. Everything was going great, but I was always broke. So it was that period took some, I don't even know how long, maybe 5-6 years, where I was really struggling financially, but I was always shooting. And I remember at that time I talked to my then agent, and I said maybe we should try something different. Maybe I should do a comedy just to do something different. And I remember she told me, like, look at your reel. It's so dark. It's so moody. You'll never get a comedy. Forget about it. It's just like it's never going to happen. As it just so happened, I had that year. This was 2005. I had the two films at the film festival, at Sundance Film Festival, in competition, and the director Richard Shepard noticed the films, and he had a big TV pilot coming up in New York, one of the big pilots that year for Ugly Betty. It was ABC series Ugly Betty. And he invited me to do interview for the job. And this was my first interview for any television work. And he after the interview, very quickly, he offered me to DP the pilot, which was very brave of him because I didn't have any experience in television, and all my experience has been like really low budget, indies. And this was supposed to be a big, glossy, colorful comedy. So the studio was completely against it. The studio thought he was lost his mind to hire somebody like me, and that he's making a biggest mistake and everything. But he still insisted that I'm the one. So and so all the producers and everybody they were so scared of me that they made sure that they hired the best crew in New York. Just if something goes wrong, I get supported. So I got to work with Larry McConkey. I don't know if you know of him, but he's one of the most famous Steadicam operators in the world, and camera operators, and he, every famous Steadicam shot, from like Copacabana shot in Goodfellas, or every famous Steadicam shot, he's done it. He was my camera operator, and then I had a huge gaffer, like all these big names. So it was terrifying, but still, the director's still full of supporting me. And the good thing was that I didn't really, and that was why Richard wanted to work with me. He didn't want somebody who's shooting all the pilots in New York. He wanted somebody who's not shooting the pilot, who doesn't think that way. So, and it actually was a really great strategy, because I had no idea how you're supposed to shoot television or television comedy. I just shot it the way I was shooting, the way I was shooting features, and it was same. I worked with the mixed light and a lot of available light, and which was not something that was usual in a comedy at that time. Today you can see amazing work in every genre on television, but it was a little different time. So I shot it the way I would shoot a feature, and I was. So it looked. The pilot looked good, and it was a very very successful TV series. I didn't want to shoot a TV series because they moved to Los Angeles, and I wanted to stay in New York. But still, it got me a lot of exposure. All of a sudden, I was getting calls for every comedy that was coming to New York for a brief period of time, and that's how I got to. Right after Ugly Betty, I got a call to take over season 1 of 30 Rock. Now I was all of a sudden I became a comedy guy, which was like completely not part of the plan. So 30 Rock really was the first time I started shooting on stage, which I never had experience shooting on stage except for some small stage on the at film school. So I parachuted right into big TV production, still without real experience of shooting on the stage or shooting with multiple cameras, and I was learning really quickly. 30 Rock was, even though it was a half-hour comedy and a sitcom, which traditionally doesn't require, doesn't rely on visuals a lot. It was still one of the most valuable experiences I had. Also, I learned a lot about the politics of the crew. It was great. And it was also a great time in history of television. You know, across the hallway, they were shooting The Sopranos at Silver Cup Studios. So, but I felt like after season 1, I felt that I've contributed to the show as much as I possibly could, and everybody was happy with how things were going. So I felt like I have to move on and start and do different things and learn more. So I made a decision then never to stay on a show for longer than first season, or ideally just a pilot, depending on how.
Okay, because I've seen pilots where it's just like I've seen your credits where your name is just on the pilot and nothing else for the program, for the series.
Well, that's what I like to do now. Yes, if it's possible. Of course, that way of making TV shows is on its way out. So a lot of the studios are no longer shooting pilots.
Wow.
Some are not. So today, most of the time, you are being asked to commit to season 1 at least.
Gotcha.
But up until recently, you would shoot a pilot, and then it would take sometimes 6 to 7 months before the first season goes into the production. But that system has changed. So, but yes, I like to set things up and make it work, and then move on. Unless it's a TV show that's really changes from episode to episode, or if it keeps challenging me.
Right.
Or if it's amazingly fun to do it, which happened to me on multiple occasions. So like the HBO for Bored to Death for HBO was one such show, but I just couldn't leave because everybody was so amazed, like actors. It was just an amazing experience. Also Marco Polo, which I felt like I was constantly learning, because it was the first project that I did that was with lots of action, lots of stunt work, and so I was constantly learning. So I did both seasons of Marco Polo.
And actually, that goes to my next question. I do have a few more questions before we go to the audience, but my next question is in regards to your TV shows. You've done Orange is the New Black, you've done Marco Polo, you've done the DEUCE. So, like, what have you learned from these programs that helps you shoot film? Because you've done Crazy Rich Asians, which is vastly different from something like Orange or something like Marco Polo. So, what did you take from those TV shows that help you photograph movies?
Well, one thing that I really cut my teeth on episodic television, where you have to react fast, and sometimes a lot of times you end up in a situation. Sometimes you just barely read the script and met the director the first time on the set on a Monday when you start shooting the episode. So it's a different kind of process and different kind of thinking, which is not. I prefer the process of making traditional process of making a feature film, because I get to spend more time with the director in the prep, and this is the part of the process where I can really influence or contribute to the project in ways that are not possible if I don't have that period with the director and that period to think and talk to all the collaborators. And sometimes, if a visual idea in a conversation with the director can result in changing the script, even, and so not only do I feel like I'm part of contributing to the drama, it's also, I can also influence the way the filmmaking of the project is going to be. And I really enjoy pre-production. In television, for example, I know, I was always curious, how come every Northern European movie looks great? Like every Swedish movie looks great. Like, why is it like, what is it? What's the secret? And I was fortunate early on. I was a camera intern on a project that Sven Nykvist shot. Svennikus is a famous director of photography from Sweden who worked with Ingmar Bergman, Tarkovsky, Woody Allen, all those amazing directors, but especially his work with Bergman was something that was always inspiring me. So I was really happy that I had this experience where I was basically, my on that film, my responsibilities were making sure that Sven doesn't lose his coat and to bring him breakfast in the morning. So that was all. Everything else was just like I would just sit by him, and as I felt more and more comfortable, I would ask him questions about his collaboration with Bergman, which is the most amazing thing that you get to you get this time with this giant. And he told me one thing. He said for many years he always knew that in September he is going to shoot a movie with Bergman. Because Bergman was every year he went into production of one of his films in September. So he started talking to him about the film in the spring, and they would just talk. They would just spend time talking. They would go to locations, study the light, and talk. And so then when the time came to do the film, they were able to accomplish something like Persona, which is visually just stunning, and shoot the whole film just in a couple of weeks with a tiny crew, like something like 16 people, or I don't even know, something like that. So because they knew what they were after, and all the other collaborators were making the same piece, because they all had time to talk and they all had time to be wrong and rethink things. Today, mostly what we do is just we bring tons of trucks and equipment. Just in any case, we also a lot of times we just show up with tons and tons of equipment, with huge crew, and then we are just ready for anything, which I think is not the best way to do it. So then I learned that in most of European national cinemas, they are spending much more time in pre-production, just talking, and that I think really is the key. So where was I? Yes. So in TV, a lot of the time that doesn't exist. You're just reacting to whatever is happening. You just you see the blocking rehearsal, and you just have to start figuring things out, and not try to stay out of everybody's way, and still do your thing, which is not something I necessarily like and enjoy, but it certainly, I built some muscles in years of working that way. So then when I came to a project like Crazy Rich Asians, where we had something like 43 locations, 42 locations, I think, in 43 days, in 2 countries and 4 cities, I was able to use those strengths when we would change the plan at the last second on the location. So it was, it gave me, I think, gave me confidence that I can change the plan at the last minute, and also enable the director to come up with the last minute idea and just follow and run with him or her. So that's, I would say, is one of the things that was good training for me, that I still rely on when I'm working on, even on a big budget features.
Awesome. I have one more question before I turn it over to the audience, and this is more of a fan question. What has been your favorite scene to shoot, and how did you pull it off?
Ever? Oh God. I'll have to I don't know if I have the answer for that.
And we can always circle back to it if you're later on in the Q&A. You're like, wait a minute, that's the one. Okay, can I be more specific then? Can I be more specific? Just
Yes,
because.
I'll just say one thing, that
Okay.
the things that are the dearest to me, and that often look the best and are serving the drama best, is something that starts as a problem or error that happens at the last minute, and then I have to just figure it out as everything's happening. Because sometimes it's good to be prepared. It's good to know what you want to do, but it's also you have to be ready to throw everything away and just work with whatever is in front of you. Sometimes it started raining, nobody knew it was going to rain, and then you have to figure out the scene at the last moment. One of the things that come to mind in Crazy Rich Asians, we had there's a scene on the staircase where there's this power play between the two characters, and I remember we were going to shoot in a completely different part of the house, and at the last minute I said, I asked the director John Chu, like, what would he think about putting the scene on the stairs, because we could play with the levels, and the power play could, we could just show it visually what's happening between the characters. And with a confident director like that, it is possible that he will say at the last minute, yeah, let's try that, even though it meant like bringing the crew to the different part of the house and everything. And it resulted, I think, with a great scene. You were going to ask me something.
I was gonna ask you Crazy Rich Asians, because I mean, obviously, me, without the rich part, that's me. But no, that's one of my favorite movies, so I want to ask you about that. So your favorite scene from that movie. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the audience, because we do have a few questions coming in. We're going to do Rimsha, Kim, Mark, and then Robert. So Rimsha, you're up. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Hi, Vanya. It's
Hello.
so good to hear your journey. It's so I think there's so much to learn. If your struggle is right there and you've made it up here, I think there's a lot for us as well that's coming our way into this industry. What I wanted to ask you was, keeping Crazy Rich Asians in mind, it's one of my favorite films. Firstly, it's truly one of my favorite films, especially because of how it looks, because that's what is so capturing about the movie. I have noticed one particular thing, that it's every shot that you have, you've taken. It's very symmetrical. It's either symmetrical, or it is center aligned. Whether it's the characters meeting personally on a date somewhere in New York, in USA, or in Singapore. So, what gave you this part to choose in the movie? Why did you choose so? And this is question one. And two, the pastel colors that the colors that you've chosen, the greens are highlighted, the whites have, it's either light, or if it's shades of dark. So could you just brief about it a little, please?
Sure. Thank you for that question. I'm glad you noticed how the composition was part of making a distinction between the worlds, like socioeconomic even worlds of Singapore. So I'm glad you noticed that. The idea was that whenever we are in the world of the old money, the family with tradition that has very strict rules and that all with lots of protocols, that we would have the composition that is very geometrical, always have a straight line, and almost so that the geometry represents how strict the world is. And then when we would go out on the streets of Singapore, there's scenes in a food court, and we would be handheld, and compositions would be very loose, and it would just have a different feeling. And then the distinction between scenes in New York and scenes in Singapore were more in color. New York had more contrast and was a bit more monochromatic, and and Singapore had all this lushness. It's basically when you fly from New York to Singapore, it's just like it's first thing you notice is just all the colors and the light. So that was one of the early decisions we made in pre-production, as I was saying. What was the second question? Oh, the colors. Yeah.
Colors, choice of colors.
The colors, the colors of the sets. That's something that our amazing production designer and also coach built. It was incredible how rich this main house was. It was when we first scouted it. There was a place that was completely falling apart. There were holes in the walls. There was bad shit everywhere. It was just like it was dangerous to even be inside. And he completely transformed it into the home of the richest family in one of the richest places in the world. And color was a big part of that. I also wanted to keep the color of light as part of that. So in New York, colors were mostly uniform, which is not the way New York is, but this was just something that we came up with. The colors were, there was not a lot of mixed color temperatures. Everything was pretty much the same color temperature. And then we wanted to have a mix of color temperatures of light in Singapore, which is something that happens there. It's just like you see when you go out on the streets. In most places in Asia, people mix any kind of bulb. Like it's all mixed. Like you have neon, you have tungsten. Just like it's all mixed together. So we try to follow that a little bit, and even in the home of the main family. So that was the inspiration. And it was always, whenever I'm in Asia, if I go to the food court or to a market or something, it's just the mix of colors of light is always so like I feel like any snapshot I take always looks amazing, and I think it comes from that unexpected mix of colors of light.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rimsha. Where are you from? It's your first time with us. I'm curious where you're calling in from.
Yes, it's my first time with all of you, and I'm calling from India.
Welcome. What time is it there?
It's 1:30 in the morning.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here. I think you should get a prize. I'll send you a prize today. Up next we have Kim. Kim, how are you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I'm here in Michigan, but I live in Atlanta, but just moving some stuff. I think my question for Vanja, he might have partially answered it because he talked about that power structure scene with Michelle and Constance. I think he was saying the way they set up the shot. I don't know. I guess my question is I feel like I'm reverberating what you already asked about. What was your favorite scene? Or is there something really interesting from Crazy Rich Asians? Film I really loved a lot for Vanja.
Thank you. Well, everything. I loved the whole experience, and a big part of that experience was the director John Chu, who was just a pleasure to work with. And I always felt like he's one of the. What you want in the director is, what I enjoy the most is with confident and experienced directors is they will. You can throw any kind of ideas, any kind of idea that you have, a last minute idea, and they will find the energy and focus to listen to it and quickly answer yes or no. And I'm happy if I hear yes, and I'm happy if I hear no. If one of the 10 ideas I might have before lunch is accepted and becomes part of the final film, that was a great day for me. So John was such director that he will hear you and will quickly tell you yes or no. And then, like for example, in the staircase scene, my idea was just like, let's put it on the stairs and let's see how we can use the stairs. But then he took it and then he came up with the blocking, and he, you know, a director like that will take an idea and make it their own, and then work it, and then he came up with that great blocking, and that's why it was one of my favorite scenes in the film. But the whole shoot was really exciting because we were literally in a different location every day, except for the reception, the wedding reception, the big scene at the end. That was the only scene in the film where we spent more than 1 day. We spent 3 days, which was,
wow.
It looked, you know, when I read the script, I thought we would be shooting that at least for a week. Yeah, there are many scenes, like, and you know, see the mahjong scene in Crazy Rich Asians, for example. I love that scene for what John did with the actors and the whole, and what they did in editing. Not necessarily for my work, but for what they've done with that scene, which I completely missed how much can be pulled out of that scene, and that's where John was. You know, that's why he's a great director.
Well, I really appreciated the film. You did a great job. One of my favorite films. It opened up a lot of doors. Thank you for your cinematography.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you so much thanks so much for being here with us for the first time as well. So welcome. For those who tuned in, who just tuned in, sorry about me giving you the wrong time, but we appreciate you for being here nonetheless. A lot of you guys have just come in, but feel free to ask Vanja whatever question you'd like. So we are using the group chat, so drop your question in the group chat, and we'll call on you. Up next, we have Mark, followed by, I believe it was Robert, then Jessica. So Mark, Robert, Jessica.
Okay. Hello, Vanja. I'm afraid I haven't seen much of your work, but I have a great appreciation for for people who do what you do. My first question is, do you or have you ever wanted to do animation of any kind? Or is that just too different an animal?
No, I was actually, when I was a kid, I was considering a career as an animator for a while. I was drawing a lot of comics, you know, and I had this friend where we were drawing comics together, and then became competition throughout elementary school. It was something cool. I was really passionate about, and then I did a little bit of my own very simple animation, and I always loved it. Today, I would really, and this just didn't happen to me yet, but I would like to be involved in a big animation movie, like a 3D animation, like Lion King or something.
Oh yeah.
Because I'd be really interesting what it would be like to light those worlds.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, yeah. Well, please keep going. I'll tell you what I got to say later.
No, please.
Okay.
Please.
Well, I was gonna say, I recently sat down and watched all of the Studio Ghibli movies, and they are really exceptional. And if you're working out of Asia, you could probably get that. That you're probably exactly the kind of guy they'd like to help with those.
Right, except that's a different kind of animation, and I don't know if they would be using a traditional director of photography to light those sets. I think that's a different. Which, by the way, it's I've seen most of those films and a lot of them multiple times, but I don't think the way they're working would involve somebody like me.
I see. Okay, but the more recent Lion King and.
For example, and I recently watched The Mandalorian on.
Oh yeah, those are great.
And the technology there, I don't know if you know about it. It's something that's based the Unreal Engine 3, this amazing system that's developed for video games.
Yeah,
It looks amazing. I think it looks better than the films.
And I hear they have just giant screens surrounding the actors, so the actors are just standing in the middle of that landscape.
Yes, it's basically just it's only things that are real are things that the actor touch or use. So I would love to have an experience in world building like that, just to be part of the team that builds those worlds.
Cool.
You know, where do you put the sun? Where do you put the moon?
Yeah.
How do you, you know, because it's so realistic that I think it needs to be lit by somebody who understands lighting and the use of lighting in a drama, which obviously they have amazing people doing that. So
I'll
I was
look forward to
completely,
seeing you on those.
let's see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the second question I have is, how has the COVID quarantine changed the way you do things?
I don't know yet because I haven't done. We have you know, New York production has just restarted, and only small commercials were able to go into production up until this last Monday. I think now we're at the level where we can start introducing productions with 50 people or less. So I don't know yet. You know, I was on a project for HBO that I was prepping for a long time. I started the prep in November last year, and then in March we were ready to go 3 days before the world stopped. So ever since we've been trying to restart the production and get us back on our feet. There's been a lot of Zoom calls with industry people, and we're trying to figure it out. It's very complicated because of the way you know, production make entertainment the way we make films here in the US is different because of because of all the social programs work and everything. You know, our employers are responsible for our health in the US, as opposed to, you know, some European countries that have you know, universal centralized healthcare. So that's why it's much more complicated for us to go back to work than Europeans or Asian productions. Australia, you know, it's much easier for them because of how insurance works here. So, and also you know, all the negotiations between the unions and the producers of how things are going to be and what changes will be allowed and what changes won't. So it's been much harder for us here to go back. Everybody feels confident that on my project we'll be shooting again in September, but it will be a very different world. You know, there's a, you know, all the departments will be separated into what it's called a pod system. The set will need to be disinfected after each department does their work, which is theoretically something that could be done, but I don't know how it's going to work in practice, because there's also work they have to do between the takes. Then, you know, so who goes next to the actors to move the mark or to move the sandbag, or just like who, you know. So it's good. There'll be a very steep learning curve, and I'm already talking to people who already have started production in Europe and what their experiences are, and I'm trying to be as ready as possible for December.
Okay, so like you anticipate like them sending you footage, you using software to change the footage, sending it back to them, and like exchanging it that way, or do you anticipate still being on set?
Oh, I'll definitely be on set. It's not. There's no question. I have to be there. What you mentioned is now happening. I'm color grading a movie that I shot last fall, and because you know, I'm not sitting with the colorist in a grading suit, and neither is the director. We all received calibrated iPads from the lab with this great software called I don't know how to pronounce it, Motion, something like that. Which, you know, as you're viewing the film, you can put in notes, and then it's designed to collaborate about in the process of color grading the film. So this is my first experience like that, and I'm halfway through the film, so we'll see how it goes.
Cool. Yeah, that's the way that's where a lot of script writing software works too. Okay. Thank you for answering my questions, sir. I'm sorry if I interrupted you. Erman usually asks my questions because I have a terrible habit of interrupting people, and I'm terribly sorry about that.
No, this is great.
You're good. Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate you, man.
Okay.
Up next, we have Robert, Jessica, Tosh, then Andrea. You're still good in timing, Vanya?
I'm good. I'm good.
Awesome. Robert, Jessica, Tosh, then Andrea.
Yes.
Andrea.
Vanya, pleasure to meet you, sir. I'm a great admirer of your work, as I said earlier. I'm in 600 for many years, mostly in the commercial world. Our paths have never crossed. We have some maybe mutual friends like the late, great Saul Negrin, who I think was a big influence in your career at one point, as he was in mine. At one point, we were both teaching at a small college here on Long Island, and he wanted to bring you out, and there was this back and forth, but your schedule didn't permit it, but maybe that can happen sometime in the future in his honor. And recently we dedicated the film area in his honor and a plaque and
I heard about that, yes.
Yes. So you're more than welcome to come out anytime. Just contact me and I'd love to have you as a guest. That's just throwing that out there. And secondly, hearing your stories about working in the darkroom, I had the same experiences. And I've been sort of thinking backwards going, I've acquired an Omega D5 recently because they were, and I'm restoring it. My dream is to again develop a dark room, which you can, at some point, if I have built, you can come out and play around and splash around in it again if you'd like to. But my question is this. Can you discuss the transition to digital from film and the differences from your perspective in shooting both? And then do you wish or hope that you will be shooting film again? Because the process, as I know and you know, is quite different. As a camera system, we know it's in digital, you're always rolling, it doesn't matter, it's digital data. In film, you're like, and there were two ways I cut the camera when shooting music video. There was a slow cut, because if you ran out of film, the job was over. And on a feature film, you want to, they're watching every inch of film, basically. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I believe we are friends on Facebook. Are we?
Of who?
Are we friends on Facebook? I think we
are friends on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
We are friends on Facebook, and I follow you on Instagram as well. And if you want to follow me, please feel free.
Definitely. Thank you. So for me, the transition to digital was difficult. And it was, it happened really overnight. It had nothing to do with the aesthetics or, I'm sure you remember this. What happened was the threat of the SAG strike. So I remember I was shooting a pilot in Los Angeles, and the producers told me we have to shoot this digital. I was like, why? Why would we have to do this? And they said, because if the SAG strike happens, we can still work with AFTRA, which is the SAG. There was this some rule from the 70s, something completely archaic, that if you were shooting your project on film, then the actors were part of the SAG
contract. Yes.
Contract. And if you're shooting on tape, then it was AFTRA. So the producers were like, we have to shoot with on tape so we can use AFTRA actors, and that killed film. That was, it had nothing to do with anything else. And overnight, the film died basically. So for me, the struggle was not necessarily the aesthetics of different aesthetics of digital versus film. It was the process. It was the fact that I trained myself to imagine what the image looks like in my head, and then I would see it the next day. And it's never quite what I thought it was going to be, but it's very close. And the more experience I had, I could say this is going to look this way, that's going to look that way. But it was happening in my head. So I was on the set when I was lighting the set. It was like I had a 3D experience. I was walking around with the light meter, and I felt like I was building the space. All of a sudden, because early digital cameras were terrible, I was glued to the screen. I was like, I made all my decisions away in the DIT tent, looking at the two-dimensional image. And it was it felt more like a design, like I'm drawing on a board rather than, and everything was happening in front of me. So I felt it was more designing. The process were more like a graphic design rather than photographic experience. And that was that was what bothered me the most, because there's really something also beautiful about, when you're talking about how things are going to look and nobody really knows what they're going to look. So it just, I think it's more creative. It encourages conversations and everything. So, but
if I may just say one thing, that also led to the mystique of a cinematographer. It was sort of like you had this wizardry that you could say, oh, when we get into grading, I'll really, you'll be amazed at what you see.
For sure, yes, and yeah, that definitely was. There was a respect for the cinematographer that's a little bit lost in some ways, but also respect for the medium. It was I was, for example, when I was I mentioned before, I was a news cameraman. We were already shooting was it DG Beta? I think it was DG Beta. So we were shooting on tape, and I remember I was at the time when I was interested to see what history of war journalism was. So I would go and see what people were doing in Vietnam, and then I would come across the footage that was shot in Second World War. Where people had these heavy cameras and they had to reload film, like the roll was 3 minutes. So they had to really think what they were doing. And the footage is always amazing. It's incredible, because they had like, I have 3 minutes. I have to stay safe. Where am I going to position myself? How do I tell a story? And people were thinking more, I thought, than we were in the early 90s, where we just like, you press the button and just like roll. The reason I wanted to explore that is because I started working for agencies and TV news agencies, and at the time, they had to send the footage via satellite dish to a distribution center. So if you are somewhere in the field, then you had to ride back to wherever the nearest city is, and land at the same point with your competition. And then the two producers will be waiting there, one from each agency, and they had to load this footage up quickly and send it to Geneva. If you're 1 minute late, all your morning, whatever you did, risking your life and everything, would just be old news. So you had to come at the last minute so you get most footage, so the competition doesn't get one more shot than you. But then you also had to have a compressed footage so they can set it up, and also the dish time, the satellite time was very expensive. So I had to start, like, you would be more respected doing agency news if you shot everything that could, like a lot of shots, so they can have choices in editing, but in a compressed tape time. So it was kind of like shooting a film in that respect. But I got really far. Yes, I thought there was a more respect for the medium. So when you used to say roll film, the world stopped every time. It was a completely different culture. Now the camera starts rolling, people are walking in front of the camera. I remember, I always remind on the set, I remember the crew, I said, I remember the time when people said crossing when they had to cross in front of the lens. Nobody says crossing. Sometimes you're just looking at somebody's lower back for like 15 minutes because they just landed right in front of the lens.
What happened to that rule? Crossing was always called with you. Striking, crossing.
Doesn't happen anymore.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
So I missed that. But I must say, over the years, the cameras got much better, the technology got much better, and I was, because I had very frustrating experiences with digital early on, because that promise of what you see is what you get never really materialized, and actually what you get was completely different from what you saw a lot of times. So I was very frustrating. So I was spending most of my pre-production trying to figure out my post-production. So I developed some workflows with the DITs and with the camera crew and with the labs. How do I make sure that the original ideas make it all the way through to the post-production? And I started liking, developing lots. And so eventually digital became something that I enjoyed because I adapted to it. And now there's some just as I said, being able to design a specific LUT in pre-production and then use the LUT in production and light to the LUT and make the decisions through the LUT is something that I really enjoy now. And now the technology is so good that you can actually, for example, I have my Crazy Rich Asians LUT, and because of the ACES, which is a color space that's where you can basically reuse your LUTs from different cameras and apply them, reuse them. I now have a library of LUTs that I can go back to and use. So I like that aspect of it, and I feel today I would love to shoot more film. But I feel I don't want it to be a gimmick. I don't want it to be like, oh, we're shooting this on film. I think you need to have a really good reason for shooting on film.
No, I did just watch The Irishman, and you see incorporations where he's shooting film and digital, and yet I didn't see any real differences between the two when I watched it.
Well, now you have this amazing technology. It's called live grain, and which for me the next thing I really want to explore is texture, because that's something that I was really missing from film, is that the film grain would change according to the exposure layers. So if the background was like my background here, it would be a little less exposed and my face would be more exposed. So grain was different in my face than it was in the background, and that gave that three-dimensionality that film has, that digital didn't have up until recently, when this live grain software is able to analyze the image in 43 different ways, and it knows and it applies the grain the way it will happen in film. It knows how different layers were exposed and then applies different grain to different layers. But it's also customizable. So you can say, well, maybe I'll do maybe my face will look like 70-45, and then my background will look like this. So
you can mix that.
I think rather what I'm interested in, rather than using this technology just to simulate film grain, I want to see whether there's a creative way of using it. Maybe like we're designing the LUT for the specific project, maybe we'll design a special texture for the specific project, or texture within the scenes. So this is one of the questions in pre-production. I always go to my line producer first and say, can we use live grain? It's expensive. So I often get no, but it's—
Was it the cost or the time or something? Why would they say no?
It's just expensive. It's just expensive because I think a lot of time was invested in the technology, and it's expensive. I think it's like $20,000 for a license for a movie of I don't know what size. But it's really amazing, and I'm looking forward to that. That would be something that when it becomes more affordable, something I'm looking forward to experimenting with. In The Irishman, I know what's the
Rodrigo.
Yes, Rodrigo. I know he uses live grain all the time on everything, on TV, on commercials, on everything. So I'm sure he was texturizing the Irishman.
Yes, if you look,
but also bringing different sources closer together.
He had 3 plans for the LUTs, if you want to call them that, for each period of that film, as I've read in ASC magazine.
Yeah.
Well, I've taken enough of the group's time. Thank you so much for your time, Vanja.
Thank you. It was really nice to meet you.
Thank you. Same here.
Thank you so much, Robert. Good to meet you, sir. Up next, we have Jessica, Tosh, Andrea, then Prathri. Jessica, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good, but I'm wondering how Vanya's doing today.
Yeah, good question.
No,
I'm doing great.
Question. Okay, Vanja, I just had to say, this is possibly one of my favorite Zoom events that Erman has done, because you're just so raw in talking about your experiences, and even just bringing up European nationalism, for example, that just really touched me. So I just wanted to thank you for that. But my question is, can you take us through your creative process when you agreed to a project? How you prepare your ideas when discussing with directors, and what influences your ideas?
Sure. I mean, in general, influences. Well, let's say that I start by reading the script several times and just taking notes, or maybe not even taking notes. If I feel like taking notes, I take notes. If I don't, I don't. I just read the script, and then I propose to the director. And you know, different directors are different people. So some like this idea, some don't, and some say yes, and then it becomes no. But I propose that we try to meet every morning, because I feel you can only be creative for certain amount of time in a day, and I think it's very short. I think it's an hour, and we have to shoot for 12 hours. You know, people who can be creative and smart for like, you know, I don't think that really exists. At some point, you just switch to autopilot. I know one of my friends is a translator in the European Union Parliament. So they're doing live translations of what's going on, and they switch them every 20 minutes, just because they can't hold concentration for longer. So, you know, when you're trying to communicate visual ideas to another person, it's difficult, because you have to first describe what you think, and then they have to they have to try to visualize what you're trying to present. You know, we know that color red is different for everybody, color blue is different for everybody, different shapes mean different things to different people. So it's hard, it's fun, but I don't think you can do it for very long. So I propose to the directors that rather than take like 5 days and go through the whole script, if we have 4 weeks or 6 weeks of pre-production, let's spread the time. So let's meet every morning before we go to the office, ideally in a coffee shop, and spend an hour together. Just talk for an hour. And if you do it over a period of 6 or 7 weeks, we will have a lot of time to go through every scene and everything that comes up. And then some days we just have coffee and we just gossip. And then some days we talk about films that we like. And then some days, all of a sudden, we go through 5 scenes. And also in the process, we get to know each other. I get to learn about their sensibility and aesthetics, and all kinds of conversations come up that normally wouldn't come up. So that, I think, is the most rewarding and most efficient process. And then, you know, when the director gets busier and busier and busier, and sometimes, you know, not every day they can even, they want to dedicate this time, because, you know, a couple of weeks before the shooting, every department needs to speak to them. They have actors that, you know, so you get access. The closer you get to the shooting, you get less and less time with the director. But on the films that I was able to go through this, it was always the most efficient shoot, and then we could, like with John Chu and Crazy Rich, we could say, I know we were going to do this. We said to everybody we were going to do this, but we're going to do this now, because we felt so that we talked about everything, and you know, that also cut the conversations on the set, because it's like, you know, remember that when I said, you mean that? Yes. Then when you said that, yes, and that's a conversation. And then we go and shoot. So that's ideally part of the process. When the director goes away, we go back to the office. And the reason why I think it should be outside the office, because of the energy in the office becomes like, you know, everybody, that's why people get so frustrated in pre-production, because everybody's focused on the problem. Everybody's like, what's the worst thing that can happen on this day? What disaster will happen when we get into this location? So the energy, that's the energy in the office. It's like a war room. So I think you need to step outside of that for a little bit of time. And there's usually a coffee shop next to the production office, unless you're in a part of Malaysia where we shot Marco Polo. But we found a place also. Yes, when the director goes away, then I take the notes, and then I work with the notes, and then I organize it, and then I send an email to the director. Like, this is what we talked about. This is what maybe I throw an image reference, or say, when we talked about that, reminds me of that film or that film, and just to have a written document. It's great if you have the luxury of having people who can help you in this process, like a PA or the director's assistant or somebody who can be present in our meetings in a coffee shop and take notes, and then organize the notes, and then type them in and everything. So if somebody is taking just organizing all the notes from all the meetings, then you come up with these great documents that you can tailor to whatever the, sometimes you can just copy paste and put it on an email for your collaborators, like for my a camera operator, for example. It's like, this is what we talked about when we talked about the film. So but that doesn't always happen, and it's if you have the luxury of having such person, that's great. Sorry I interrupted you.
No, I'm in awe. I've never really heard someone go through the creative process like this. And I'm just wondering if you don't mind, like, to ask what influences your ideas as well, because I remembered earlier when you were talking about Crazy Rich Asians and socioeconomic status and how to really portray that on camera. Is that some sort of thing that you really try to portray thematically when working with cinematography, or is this something that each film, each TV show, you kind of just do your own thing?
Some people told me that they can always recognize that I've shot something, which for me is a little bit terrifying, because I think a cinematographer shouldn't have a style. You shouldn't have a style. You should be like, whatever you're doing should always be about this particular drama. But there's some things that I don't really even know about that are just part of my aesthetics, that it's something that those last minute decisions that you make, that is basically something that may be part of my style. But for every project is different. For some projects, like for example the DEUCE, I was fascinated by that era in New York City, the 70s, because it was an amazing time in this country, and also it was amazing time in the city. Also, some of my favorite films were shot during that time here, and so I started by watching all the films from the 70s, but then I realized that that I didn't want to simulate the shooting style of the 70s. I wanted it to be like showing up in the 70s with modern technology and modern shooting styles, so you can see what 70s really looked like, rather than simulate what the limitations of the medium were dictating then, to the cinematographers then. So I wasn't sure what that meant, and then I remember one day I walked into art department's room, and usually art departments will put all sorts of inspirational photographs or paintings and everything on the walls. Almost every art department that I worked with, they all do this. So I was just looking around, and there was one photo of a woman lit by red on 42nd Street. Lit by the documentary photo from 1970 something, lit by red neon from the front, and then the street behind was completely green because of the sodium vapor lamps that were used at the time for street lights. That all had this greenish hue, and that color contrast just was so intense, and also felt so stylized, but it was real, because this was a real photo, and that's what I guess New York at that time looked like. It was this all kinds of neon lights mixed together with this. There was nothing that would be called clean light on the street, and that one photo became inspiration for me for the whole series. And then I decided that if I just follow what the true light source would be there in 1972, with all its problems or all inconsistencies or anything, that would become a style. In the project that I'm currently working on, it's also a period piece, also in New York. It's 19th century. It's called The Gilded Age, and I just got obsessed about just researching what was going on in the city at that time, and I got so into it. I read many books about the period, and I see the city in a different light now, because now it's like, oh, this was built because of that. This happened. But I came across, I tried to find literature about how the rooms were lit and how the streets were lit and what was. So I realized that in 1880s, light was expensive. It was an expensive thing. So you only the rich people could use a lot of light, and people who were poor used very little light. People who were poor also had fewer windows in their homes, and in in this project, I think I'm going to use to show the socioeconomic status is how much light you get, and this is something I'm now trying to develop. I can't talk more about this project because we haven't shot a single scene yet. But
Vanja, thank you so much for sharing this with me. This was just absolutely wonderful. Speaking as a producer, I just want to make sure that people like you in anything that I am a part of, are comfortable with what they do. And I just think that this is the most helpful answer I've ever gotten, really, from a Q&A. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Always good to see you on here. Up next, we have Tosh, followed by Andrea, then Pruthvi. And hey, guys, we are still going to be on here for networking after the Q&A, so don't forget, stick around. So Tosh, Andrea, then Pruthvi.
Yo, what's good, Vanja?
Always good to see you, Tosh, my man.
What up? So I just want to thank you for doing this. And my question kind of piggybacks off of Jessica. So Jessica, thank you for the question. So my question for you, right? As an actor, how can we help you thrive?
I don't think you should help me thrive. I think we should be supporting you. I try, and I try to accommodate the actors as much as possible. So ideally, I know I'm good at what I'm doing if on the day I'm not getting into actor's way, and still get what I want. So, which is challenging, because sometimes you want to control the composition, for example, and you come up with this great concept. This is how the composition is going to be, and then Meryl Streep shows up on the set and says, "Well, no, I'm not coming out through that door. I'm coming down the stairs." That doesn't make sense to me. So it all falls apart, right? But you still like to stay true to the concept that you developed in compositions and in lighting and everything. So my goal is to let everybody feel and be as creative as they can be, without imposing restrictions on everybody, and hopefully still get what I want. And I now know, because of the experience I have, that getting what I want can be done in more than one way. So I always, I never get, whenever I'm like lighting the stage, for example, or prepping a location, I'm trying to keep the options open. So of course, the big lights on big cranes, you can't really move them around. So I only decide about where the big heavy equipment goes, and then I try to build in as many little options into the plan as I can, and also because of the experience, I know that's how the best work happens, not just for me, but for everybody involved. And I must say, I learned that the hard way. I did one film. I'm not going to say the name of the film, but it was one of the early films, and it was with a friend of mine, and we prepped the film to death. We storyboarded every scene. It was one of the first features that we storyboarded everything. We made a plan for every little thing, and I think we suffocated the film in the process, because once we started shooting it exactly how we planned, and just the film was never came to life. There are directors like David Fincher or Alfred Hitchcock that can work this way, but there are those 2 or 3 guys, you know, and so it's not something that you have to beat yourself up if things are not going as exactly as the way you planned it. It can be a strength. That answers the question. Yes, I think so.
Okay, yeah, that actually does answer the question. That's actually very interesting. Like, I just want to ask, because I mean, like, yeah, we're on screen, but y'all the ones that film us and have us look good. So it's like, how can we help y'all do your best job as possible?
Right. There's some. As I said, I don't think you should necessarily think about that. It might come with the experience that you'll just become aware of what everybody around you is doing, or not. I work with amazing actors who are clueless about the camera and are not interested where the camera is, and actually don't want to know where the camera is. But then I also worked with with actors like Alec Baldwin, for example. He knows about not only where the camera is and what the lens is on the camera. He knows what third grip is doing. He understands what everything that's happening. So, and both amazing actors. So it's not that you should be one way or the other. It's just, it's same with the directors. Some of the directors are completely involved with the camera and choice of lenses and the camera position and composition and everything, very, very involved and very, know exactly how they want it to be. And then some directors don't care about that really so much. They focus on the actors and let the cinematographer help them with the positioning of the camera. And they might say, I don't think this works, or I like this, but they're not going to say like this where the camera is going. So everybody has a different way, and it takes time to find what your way is, I guess.
Okay. Hey, yeah. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you for the question.
Always good to see you, Tosh. Up next, we have Andrea Prithvi, then Victor. Andrea, how you doing?
Oh, I got my virtual one.
Hey.
I'm a floating head. I forget that sometimes I have that one on. But hi, Vanja. Thank you so much for chatting with us, and happy Saturday.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And I did see that you were born in Croatia. Is that right?
Yes.
And I'm Croatian too, and that's definitely like a place that I want to visit. I mean, I've seen pictures. It's absolutely stunning, beautiful beaches. The people are very amazing. And I guess my question is how would you compare Croatian or international cinema to American cinema? And either is it very similar, or are there a lot of differences in style?
There are a lot of differences in primarily it starts with the way that films are financed. In European cinema, I'll just talk about European and American because that's what I know.
Yeah.
In European cinema, the government finances the film industry. It's considered as part of the culture and cultural identity, and so you basically get your resources from the government. And sometimes there are independent bodies separate from the government who decide which projects should be done and reject the others. And ideally, this these agencies separate from the government, so it could be politically neutral, and a lot of countries have that system. But because the films are financed that way in countries, small cinema like Croatia, which will never have a movie that's economic success. They'll never make money off any movie they do. It's just it's just too expensive to make a movie, and there are only so many people who will see a movie in Croatian language. So it's not about how many tickets you sell. It's about how many festivals you get into, and how critical acclaim and all those things. So while in the States, it's the film has to make money and has to return the investment, and film is commercial here. So it's important to sell the ticket, and so sometimes big films are made for the demographic that's going to buy the tickets. So you're making the film for the market if you're spending so much money.
Oh yeah, more about profit.
For in hope to make a profit, right? But I was last year. I was a juror in the European Film Awards, and I saw every film that was produced in Europe last year. So it's kind of similar there, because they're not making the film for the market. They're making film for the boards in film festivals. So you get I was surprised that the percentage of films that are the same is roughly the same from in what happens here. You still have those 20% of interesting films and 5% of amazing films, no matter what the system is. But I was really surprised that a lot of the European films I saw looked the same, even had similar titles. The music was the same as in American cinema. There's always going to be a small percentage of really innovative and creative and original work, and a lot of the things where people just try to appeal to a certain either kind of festivals or
like a market,
or the market. I remember in the 90s it was all about Sundance. So it was like after 10 years, it was like you could recognize a film that was made for Sundance, basically.
Yeah. For sure.
So I don't think necessarily one system produces more generates more creative people. I think it's
it's about the audience and the purpose, I guess, behind it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And whether the filmmaker has really something to say and the original
the message.
Way to say it. Yeah.
And then that kind of leads to my next question of that is that, with every part and every aspect of film, what do you find is the most rewarding to you? Would you say, there's just this shot where you just felt right in your soul, or maybe a day after dailies, or seeing the film as a final project and product? Or would you say maybe in pre-production when you're figuring out things and troubleshooting, what do you find is the most rewarding to you?
Well, lately, it's been something that doesn't really have to do with the actual film. It's been the learning and growing process that comes from the experience of making the film. So, for example, 7 years ago, I've never been to Asia. I didn't care about going to Asia. I was like, if there was a vacation, I would much rather go to a place that I've been a million times on a Croatian coast or something like that. So then I got a call to do Marco Polo in Malaysia, and which I was excited about because it was the right project for me at the time and everything. So I came to Malaysia. We had a crew because there was not we had to bring a lot of people in. So we had a crew from 27 different nations. My camera crew was partially from New Zealand and partially from France. My electricians were Thai. the grips from New Zealand also. You know, it was just but 27 nations in the crew,
Wow.
and it just culturally that experience from just working with all these people and see how everybody comes together and trying to learn little cultural things was something that was one of the most
Very
beautiful
challenging,
experiences
but it's also challenging and beautiful, right?
It's surprisingly how well it works. It's
Yeah.
surprising. It's surprising.
Yeah.
People, even with some, you know, part of the, you know, sometimes departments wouldn't even speak the same language, but it's, you know, somehow it works out beautifully. But also spending time in that part of Asia and flying to different places every weekend and everything. I fell in love with that part of the world, and I can't wait to go back. And then I took a project the next year just to go back, you know, and then which led to Crazy Rich Asians. And so I felt like I grew in many ways that was not necessarily professional by doing these couple of projects there. And ideally, every new project gives you something like that. Whether you have new friends, you know, that's also relationships. A lot of the directors I work with are now my very good friends. And you know, there's something in the experience of making a film that's kind of like it's so intense, and you have to work so closely in the trenches, and every 5 minutes there's a new crisis, and you develop a very personal relationship with people very quickly.
Oh, for sure.
One of the beautiful things also. And I have a lot of real friends who were my collaborators first on my film. So that's
the shared
also
experience.
Yes.
And you speak the language of film, and I think that is how, you know, you can all communicate, right? No matter what language you speak, it's the language of film. And you know, everyone's very professional, and they know enough and are excellent in their department that it's easy to understand each other and one another.
That's right. Also, sometimes it's you know, for we on Marco Polo, we took one of our camera crews were local people from Malaysia, and you know, which didn't have experience of working on a big international project, which is different. The way of working is different. The standards are different and everything. And they grew into such amazing professionals so fast that I've asked them to be. When I came back to do Crazy Rich Asians, I invited them to do it. So it's just like sometimes seeing how people grow and how they become like first class professional by any international standard. It's also very rewarding, you know, to witness that. So.
Definitely. Thank you so very much for sharing your experiences. And I'll let the next person go too, because I don't want to take too much of your time, but thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Always good to have you on here, girl. Up next, we do have a few more, and then we're going to be networking, folks. So we have Prithvi and then Victor. Prithvi, you're up.
Hi, everyone. So my question is for this Vanja. So I am a cinematography student in LA. So I always wondered how European or American cinematographer felt after collaborating with Asian crews. So how was your experience in Crazy Rich Asians movie?
Collaborating with the director, you mean?
Yeah, director.
Yeah. Yes. Well, as I described, it was definitely one of the best experiences I had working with the director, because John was so open to new ideas and always had, you know, for example, there's one scene in the film where Constance comes to the house for the first time, and when she's introduced to the place, it all plays out in a single shot. When she gets introduced to all the people, which I think is a beautifully choreographed shot. And John had this idea from the beginning that he wanted to do that whole scene in one shot, because there were so many people, and you know, if you're starting to, you know, do cutaways and everything, it would take forever and be less interesting. But also we had you know, there was a scene where we had a lot of extras, all, you know, in amazing costumes, in tuxedos and everything, and but we didn't have proper air conditioning. So the fact that that John came up, John's concept was to shoot everything in one shot, really saved us. So it was, for example, one of the ideas that was both amazing for the film and for the scene, but also practically it saved the day. So that was definitely one of the great experiences, John was definitely somebody I love collaborating, and I hope we'll have many more chances to work together again. In terms of difference between Europe and the States, one of the differences is that in Europe, DP almost always operates the camera, so it's a little bit different. The communication with the director is a little bit different because you're always at the camera, and sometimes you can do things without explaining exactly what you're doing you can improvise a little bit more. And in the US, you are required to use a camera operator, which was initially a strange thing for me because I came from European cinema and I was operating all my movies, and then all of a sudden I had to work with an operator, and it was hard to give that up. And also, only when I gave it up, I realized how much of lighting and contrast I'm controlling through composition because I'm operating. I wasn't aware of that before when I was operating because it was just something that came naturally. But when I started to work with amazing camera operators, I really started to appreciate the system, and now I really enjoy my collaboration with my camera operators. People that my first choice in New York, Oliver Carey, for example, is somebody I've done many projects with. He always makes the scene better. He helps me do my job better because he relieves me of some responsibilities that I have, and always comes up with the ideas, and sometimes with a better idea than we had in pre-production. So I love it now. I got used to it, and I really love it now. Also, it's a very for camera operator, it's a very political also position because they're right in the middle of between the actors, between DP, and between the director. So their job is all about communication as much as it is about composition and camera work.
So how much time you give for pre-production in Crazy Rich Asians? I
believe I had 8 weeks. And that was really short because we had so many locations. As I said before, we had, I think, 43 locations in 42 days. And just to see all the locations takes a lot of time. I mean, to first find the locations, then to see them, and then do all the prep. So it sounds a lot, but it was really not, it was barely enough.
Okay.
The trend today is unfortunately to cut down pre-production to a bare minimum, which I think because of all the reasons that I mentioned before, I think it's not great, but that's what's been happening.
Okay. So any advice for me as a cinematography student?
I would just recommend to you to shoot as much as you possibly can. And try to learn, focus not only on your aesthetics, but also about what you can do to make the film better.
Okay.
And that's for a lot of people it's obvious, but for some people are so obsessed with their own aesthetics that they're ready to get in a way of film being better. And that's something that I think as a young cinematographer you do because it's so precious. Everything is so precious to you, and it's good to remind yourself that the more successful the movie is, the more successful you will be as a cinematographer and filmmaker. And that's really, you are a filmmaker, not necessarily a person who is just all about aesthetics.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was very insightful advice for me.
Thank you so much, Profi. Good to see you, sir.
Yeah.
Last but not least, and then we're gonna be networking, folks. We have Victor. Victor, how are you?
Good. How's it going? Thanks
Good, sir.
for
Good to see
taking the
ya.
last question, I guess. Yeah.
Good to see you
Glad
again,
that
man.
was. Yeah. Good to see you too. Hello, everyone. Hello, Vanja. How are you?
Hello. Very nice
I
to
think you
meet
may have good. You may have already answered this question earlier, possibly, or a collaboration of all the questions together. So I guess maybe I'll twist it a little bit. If you're looking at in your perspective, if you were, let's say, the actor or the actress, the talent, but also nowadays a lot of people create their own content. They become the director themselves at some point, or they have interest in cinematography. You know, you name it, it's probably down the list. So if you're in that person's shoes, let's say, instead of being the cinematographer that you are, if you were to film something yourself, you know, what kind of would the suggestions or kind of tips that you would look at, figuring that you have knowledge from both sides, let's say. As a talent, you know, you have to know what you have to do. But also if you were to film something, you're thinking it might be different than how it actually comes out, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I think and please interrupt me if I'm not answering the question.
Yes, please.
I think one of the big part of cinematography for me is light, and it is because for me light is like the smell, and you know that thing when you smell something and then it reminds you of some experience from your childhood. Light does that too. You know, when you come home from work, for example, and you want to be relaxed, you turn off the lights and you turn on your favorite light. Or when you want to do this kind of mood, we all do it every day. You close the window. So we all unconsciously, without even thinking about, start always manipulate light around us because we want to feel a certain way. So I think it's good also, especially as an actor who might be interested in what cinematography does for them, is start to think about how certain lighting situations feel, like what mood you are, how does it affect mood, does it remind you of something, and then that's really what it's all about. You know, there's a lot of technical stuff that you need to know, but there's really nothing crucial about technical aspects of cinematography that you can't learn in a very short time. It's all about it's really about how you can contribute to the drama through the means of lighting or composition, and you don't have to be, I think, you don't have to be a very technical person to be a great cinematographer. I know I'm not. I really, you know, in some ways, camera is the least interesting piece of equipment for me, because camera is only there to capture what you hopefully created in front of the camera. I enjoy all these other aspects of what I do much more than, you know,
just the camera itself.
Yeah, just the camera itself.
I see. Because part of that question originally was being that you film, you know, overseas as well, and I did some projects last year overseas in Romania, and had a great time. And the lighting was different because most of it was shot outdoors, so we were lucky enough to get. It was still an indie type thing, right? So it definitely is different comparing from a big Hollywood budget, where you have millions of dollars and equipment and a whole crew, to, you know, something you do small with only. If you're lucky to get 10 people, you know, to help you with that. So what you mentioned is definitely true. I was thinking about the lighting in addition to everything else during that time too, because I was not the director. I was just there as, you know, kind of helping my friends out. But I was doing a little bit of everything. So it started to make me think that if you're filming overseas, it's probably how you do the lighting, for example, from, you know, Crazy Rich Asians to Marco Polo, it's totally very different because the mood is different too, right?
It's different. You know, every now and then I go back to my home country and do a small film with the Croatian directors that are most of them are my friends, and I like to go from a huge production to a tiny little film in Croatia, and sometimes you know, it would be really small films where we wouldn't even have the proper equipment. But it's fun, and I always learn from it. For example, the Croatian director that I did 3 films with that came to me and said that he got the development money for his feature, basically just to write the script, but that he decided he wants to do the whole film for that money. So he's like, we have, I don't know what the number is, something very small, but can we make the whole film? Can we shoot the whole film in 10 days?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, let's do it. Let's, what's the minimal crew that we can have? And we came up, I think, with 14 people. And we went to this remote place in the mountains, and we shot film in 10 days. The film looked really one of the best looking films I did, because we were using only natural light.
Right.
But everybody was on board, so it wasn't, actors understood that we are not going to be lighting. So if we lose light, then the scene has to take place by the windows.
Yeah,
So
exactly. You have
they
to
would go.
improvise, yeah.
They would go by the windows, and we would shoot. So everybody was completely on board, and because of it, we were shooting fast. So we would sometimes be able to get the scene before the light started to dramatically change.
Right.
And it looked beautiful. And sometimes you think, why don't we always work this way? Well, you don't always work this way because you can't force this kind of working on everybody.
That the environment is different, right?
Yes, and as I said before, if Julianne Moore comes and she says, "I'm coming down the stairs, I'm not coming through the door," that she has reason for it, and she's the most amazing filmmaker. So you want to want her to be able to do what she wants to do, and for that you need to control the environment, you need to light it, you need to control whatever is happening out the window, and then little by little everything goes from and becomes huge. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And what you just mentioned, the last thing was you said how you shot everything natural light. That's kind of how we did in Romania. And that's how I picture things where you don't have, let's say, that kind of crew or budget or whatever the reason. You improvise what you can, right? And
I love shooting that way.
I
love shooting that way. You just need to have the director on your side. And the director needs to understand the limitations of working that way. And if they do, then it's the best way of shooting. And I was Terrence Malick works this way. Only natural light. But natural light is basically, he says, we'll only be shooting for 2 hours this day.
Exactly right.
Because that's what and then we go home back to the hotel. So that's not exactly what you and I are talking about. But
Are any of those projects you shot, are they on where anyone can see them? Some of the shorts you've done in Croatia at all? Or
there's one. If you go to my website, there's one scene from one movie that you'll realize is a different language. And you'll recognize
Croatian.
Yeah, so there's a scene from that film, because that film was actually very dear for me, and we shot it on 16 millimeter.
Oh really?
Anamorphic 16. So there's also available light in anamorphic 16. It was just a combination of things that just came out.
Yeah, I just wanted to see kind of
I still love the
look of it. Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your time.
Sure.
Thank you, Roman.
Of course, man. Thank you so much, Victor. Vanja, thank you so much for being on here for almost 2 hours. For those who came in late or missed the first half, no worries. We have the recording. We'll send it over to you today. Once again, of course, after we wrap up with Vanja, please stick around for more networking. Vanja, thank you so much again, sir. It's been such an honor, of course, for a cause too. So please check out eji.org for the Equal Justice Initiative and Innocence Project at innocenceproject.org. Vanja, where can folks find you online?
I have there was this flyer that you have that has all my information. There's my Facebook page, which is my name, basically. The address on all social media is just my name is one word. So I'm on Instagram also as Vanja Cernjul, one word, and Facebook, and there's also my website, which is myname.com. If you put it in Google, it'll come up.
Amazing. Once again, thank you so much, sir. It's good to catch up with you and see you after 3 years.
Absolutely, this was so much fun, and all the questions were great, and all the guests were amazing. So I hope
Yeah, I gotta say,
very
this is
good.
one of the best Q&As we have had in a while, and one of the best audience too. So thank you all for being here. Vanya, before we go, I'm gonna wrap things up, and then I'd love to take a group picture with all the squares. So thank you again,
Sure.
sir.